All right. So, welcome to episode 2. I'm back. I'm in a slightly different location in the house. I'm using my actual webcam today, so my computer is over there, which is going to be weird because I can't see myself while I'm doing this, so I'm just staring at a camera. Uh, yeah, kind of strange, but my wife says this is a good angle and the lighting is good and whatnot. So thank you, Kelly. So episode 2, we left off in episode 1 uh, with I apologize for all the uhs. Trying to get my thoughts together. Um, there's another one. Episode 2, we are going to pick up where we left off from episode 1. Episode 1, we left off with me getting diagnosed with ADHD at 7 years old and getting prescribed with Ritalin or methylphenidate, whichever term you want to use. Honestly, as a kid, I actually kind of prided myself on calling it methylphenidate. Um, I felt like it made me seem smart, or it made me feel smart to call it methylphenidate. So, yeah, there's that. Anywho, so this is where, as I said in the previous episode, this is where things kind of went downhill. And I say that because of how I was medicated. Um, and again, the lack of information, the lack of research fully into ADHD and ADD caused some mistakes to be made, and I don't blame my parents because they didn't know any better. They did what the doctor told them. I mean, that's as simple as it can be. The doctor said, he needs to take, I think it was 10 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day. And my parents did what the doctor said. Unfortunately, that high of a dosage for a kid like me was way too high, um, to the point where, according to my sister, who I mentioned in the previous episode, she's 16 months older than I am, so she was very much aware of life and things that were going on during this time. Um, she, now that we are adults, she has talked to me about how when I was on my medication, I was basically a nobody, a non-person. I think she used the word zombie, um, because I would just sit there and stare off into space and just kind of be there. And she has admitted that there were times that she kind of wished for me to be off my medication, because even though I would have been hyper and annoying and just frustrating as a little brother, I would have at least been a person, and not the zombified being that she was living with until I was 12 and got off my Ritalin. We'll get to that later, obviously. So here I am, taking Ritalin, taking a lot of Ritalin. With we changed schools. My family, we lived in a duplex in Raytown when I was little. Um, at this time in the story, we lived in Raytown. Um, excuse me. Excuse me. Um, and my parents, around the end of my first grade school year, looked into buying a house, and we bought a house over off 87th Street and Raytown Road in Kansas City, which is where I grew up. And that changed school districts for me. I was no longer in the Raytown School District. I was now in the Hickman Mills School District. And the elementary school I went to in Hickman Mills, Dobbs Elementary, um, did a much better job. They had a better grasp on how to handle kids with behavioral disorders, as they were called at the time. I don't know if they're still called that. Um, but they had a better handle on how to deal with it. They had a counselor. Her name was Mrs. Harris. I still remember her. She was like 5 foot nothing and had curly brown hair. She was really awesome. And then they had a BD/LD teacher and classroom. Um, BD, of course, as I said, is behavioral disorder. LD is learning disorder. So you would have this one teacher that would help with the children that had a hard time behaving. And then you had the same teacher helped with the children that had a hard time learning. You could be one or the other. You could be both. Sometimes the behavior issues could cause you to have trouble learning, like this guy. So in that room, that teacher was a mixed bag. I mean, they had a lot better of an idea and a better plan than Southwood Elementary did, where if things weren't going well, if I was having a rough day, they wouldn't send me to the principal. They would send me to the BD teacher, and I would go hang out with her for a little while and get my day back in order. And if I was doing well that week, I got to play on the Atari. Yes, Atari. Not Nintendo, even though Nintendo was out and I had one at home. I got to play on the Atari, and I played a lot of Asteroids. There was also they had a team of teachers that were able to assist her in times that kids were being uncontrollable. I remember several occasions where another little boy that was in this class with me, in this group, he was uncontrollable and got wrestled to the ground with a blanket a couple times, and I also was wrestled to the ground with a blanket once or twice, and honestly took a little bit of pride in the fact that it took several adults to handle me. So there's that. This is just information. I'm not really saying this for any reason other than to put it out there. So during my elementary school years, things were interesting for me. I developed a really intense like of fire. I was a bit of a pyromaniac for a while, to the point where at one point I accidentally set my front yard on fire. That was quite the experience. And a little hint to everyone out there: if it is a windy day, if your grass is dry and brown, do not try to light a string on fire on the grass in your side yard, because guess what? Fire spreads. Fortunately, it didn't do any damage to the house or anything like that. My mom was home, and she was quite quick on the uptake when I came in the house and got a big 32-ounce cup, filled it with water, and went back outside. And then came back inside and filled another cup of water and went back outside. And by that time, my mom's like, "What are you doing?" Like, trying to put out a fire. And she comes outside and the entire side yard is on fire. and part of the front yard is on fire, and it's starting to spread to our neighbor's yard. Um, and I honestly don't remember how we got it put out, but we did, without any damage to our house or the neighbor's house. Fire trucks weren't called or anything. We just got it put out. So yeah, I developed a little bit of a pyromania bend in my life. Still a big fan of fire. I enjoy fire, but now I enjoy it in a way where I know how to control fire. I understand fire, and what can make a good fire for like a fire pit or bonfire, that kind of stuff, or grilling. And I understand what can stop a good fire from being a good fire. Yeah, which is a weird way to have learned that skill, but that's what I did. During this time frame, made some friends, and this is one of those stories where I'm going to name some names, and I don't hold any bad feelings against or for any of the people in this story. I'm just stating facts. But it's also a story that kind of what's the word? Kind of made the issue, the fears that were developed by the class voting on me in first grade, kind of made this worse. So, sorry. So in second grade, when I started at Dobbs, met this kid that lived around the corner from me. Their name was Mitch. So Mitch was an only child, and he and I became pretty good friends. Him and another kid named Booker. We became pretty good friends. Then in third grade, like good friends in that I would go over to Mitch's house and we would play video games together, or play with action figures and stuff like that. And pardon the Diet Pepsi break. So that was going well. That was a high point for me. And then in, I think, third grade, maybe fourth grade, a kid named Dennis moved into the neighborhood, and Mitch and Dennis were both going to karate together. Like they both were in the same karate group, class, whatever. And Mitch kind of bailed on me for Dennis. Dennis didn't really seem to care for me as a person or as a friend, so Mitch ended up choosing him over me in a lot of ways, and that sucked. And as a third grader that is medicated up to his eyeballs 90% of the time, I had no idea how to deal with that. It hurt, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me, that Mitch didn't want to be my friend anymore. Made me really mad at Dennis for a long time. Didn't care for him. Ended up hanging out with Booker a little bit more, but not as much as pretty much anything else. Like I didn't hang out with many kids on a regular basis anymore after that. I played with this kid named Kevin that lived down the street. Played with this other kid named Andrew, I think, that lived in my neighborhood. And then I met Jared, Jordan, and Shane, the Prescott boys, who were not a good influence. They were not good friends, but they were my friends. I did hang out with them. I did go over to their house regularly. Um, so let's see some things that happened in elementary school. Uh, so Jared, Jordan, and Shane. That's that's the order you say their names in, but that's not their age order. Um, Jordan was the youngest, Shane was the middle child, and Jared was the oldest. He was my sister's age. No, he was older than my sister. Shane was my sister's age, and Jordan was my age. And I believe it was fourth grade. Riding home on the bus, and Jordan was sitting behind me, and we were goofing around, smacking each other over the back of my bus seat. Now I was sitting like 2 seats behind the bus driver, and the bus driver didn't seem to be bothered by the fact that we were smacking each other over the back of my seat and playing and standing up and being just hooligans. Until Jordan smacked me over the head with his backpack, and this moment, like that time that he did that, it really hurt. And I didn't know why it hurt so much. I remember, for some reason, I had a pencil in my hand that the tip had broken off of it, and in that moment, in that pain, I put my hand on my head because it hurt. Still had the pencil in my hand. That's a key detail that'll come in just a minute. So I'm holding my head, man, that hurts, because he had his reading book in his backpack. And now, those of you that are around my age, you'll remember the Rare as Hen's Teeth reading book that was that thick, probably weighed 5 or 10 pounds, or at least it seemed to. Huge, heavy book full of stories. He had his reading book in his backpack, and I thought, man, he just hit me with his reading book, and that really hurts. I'm crying and just in pain. I pull my hand down, and my hand is covered in blood. And yeah, so we are around the corner from my house at this point when this happens. We were actually at Mitch's bus stop, Mitch and Booker's bus stop. My bus stop was the next stop. Almost made it home without injury that day. But so I have blood all over my hand. I am just bleeding profusely from my head, because head wounds, you may know, bleed a lot. They just kind of gush blood everywhere. So bus driver has stopped now at the bus stop. They've called 911. They have called my dad at work, and from his story about it, when they called him, what they said was, there has been a stabbing on bus 22. And that's all they told him. Which, not the best amount of information. So at Crittenton, he was probably 15 minutes away. I think he got there in like 10 minutes. Again, I don't really have a time cognition here because I was in pain. But police showed up, ambulance showed up, and got me out the bus, got me cleaned up a little bit, checked. By the time they're checking out the wound on my head, my dad has gotten there, and he and the paramedic said that I had a little cut about that big about right here, maybe a little bit further forward. Um, that they could maybe put a couple stitches in it, but that was up to my dad, and my dad said no, he'll be fine. It'll be okay. We'll just get some ice on it, and he'll be fine. So we walked to the house because again we were only like a half a block away from my house. Um, found out the next day or later that day, I don't remember, that what had happened is Jordan had his scissors in his backpack as well, and this was not a pair of safety scissors. I don't remember if they had safety scissors at this point. This is like 93, 92, something like that. And when he had hit me over the head with his backpack, his reading book had jammed his scissors into the top of my head, where they had actually stabbed into, like, hit my skull and gone in a little bit and then come right back out in that instant. And they found this out because they found blood on his scissors from stabbing me, which he didn't do it on purpose. I didn't think he did it on purpose. We were just goofing around. No harm, no foul, right? So that witnessed by everybody in my neighborhood that was still on the bus that this happened, and I found out, I think, like 3 years ago. This girl that lived around the corner named Sequoia, she thought, now this is 20 years later, she had thought for 20 years that I had taken my pencil and stabbed myself in the head and then blamed it on Jordan. Which kind of tells you the amount of crazy that people thought I was, because I was weird. I was hyperactive. I was kid with ADHD. Fortunately, a couple years ago when I found this out, I was able to correct that thought for her. And yeah, so that was a fun story. Anytime I've ever shaved my head, like I did a few times in the Navy, I have gone looking for that scar, in an effort to see it, because I think scars are cool. So yeah, that's pretty much elementary school, other than the one other thing that I have always regretted that kind of came to a head in the last few years with my oldest stepson getting into what I call the Smarty Pants class, which in the Blue Springs School District it's called Stretch. Back in my day when I was going to Hickman, it was called Code. There was, now, understanding this, part of my individual education plan for being a behavioral disorder kid, I took an IQ test every other year, and I scored consistently in and around the 140 range, which, if you don't know, that is considered to be genius level. So I should have been able to get into code, but because of my ADHD and my behavioral disorder labels, I was not allowed to get into code, and it really frustrated me because I felt that I deserved to be in code. I was smart enough I just had a hard time paying attention. There was a girl that lived across the street from us named Rochelle that got into code, and I was very jealous for quite a while. And then now with my stepkids being in school and my oldest biological son Jeffrey being in school, the eldest has gotten into stretch, but the second oldest, the 9-year-old, and our 8-year-old daughter has not gotten into stretch. When we are aware of how intelligent they are, to the point where we had the 9-year-old tested twice and had his IQ tested, and he scored like 130 and needed 132 to get in based on his IQ. And it really kind of hit home for me that how much that had frustrated me as a kid to not be deemed special in the right way. So I kind of struggled with it internally when we're going through this stuff, because I know that Ted is a smart kid. He in fact got straight A's on everything all last year in third grade. Got straight A's. First year of getting letter grades, he gets straight A's, which may be to his benefit that he didn't get into stretch, so that he's able to excel where he is. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, that's one other thing I remember from childhood, from elementary school, is not getting into code and feeling left out. I'm going to try to wrap this video up here pretty quick. Got to get ready for Jeffrey's soccer game. But the one last thing I will talk about today is I played t-ball with Kansas City Baptist Temple as a kid, and I distinctly remember my fifth grade year, the last year that I would have been able to play in their league. We were doing kid pitch. I was the previous year I had been getting tried out as a pitcher, because as a second and third grader, I was playing left, right, or center field, and was able to throw the ball from the fence to home plate. Had a heck of an arm. I just didn't have accuracy from the pitcher's mound. But my final year, we ran into an issue where the coach clearly didn't feel that I was a valued member of the team. And I say that because halfway, 3/4 of the way through the season, we stopped finding out when practices were. And my team actually went on to win the championship that year, and without me. They just stopped telling us when practice was. I stopped having practices to go to, and found out that my team went on without me. And that really sucked. Because I was a hyper kid, and baseball was something that I could get into. I loved baseball as a kid. Absolutely loved it, like obsessed over it. Stayed up late at night, surreptitiously listening to the Royals on the radio, or any baseball game I could find on the radio, when I was supposed to be asleep. And I say surreptitiously because I was supposed to be asleep, so I was listening to it very quietly right next to my head, so that my parents wouldn't know that I was awake. And yeah, and then my coach just kind of hung me out to dry. which hurt because here we are yet again, another situation where somebody else decided that I wasn't good enough to be a part of the group, and that sucks. So that's what I'm going to leave you guys with today. That's through to 5th grade. I was on Ritalin the whole time. Next time we'll talk about 6th grade, the summer between 5th and 6th grade, when the head pastor at the church I grew up at had a good talk with my parents about the possibilities of getting me off of medication, and they made the decision to go ahead and take me off of Ritalin at 11 or 12 years old. And that made things go better, but it was rocky at first. So we will talk about that next time. Again, if you liked it, hit the like button somewhere in here. Hit the like button. If you want to keep seeing these videos, hit the subscribe button and the bell to make sure you get the notifications and all of that good stuff. Look forward to talking to you guys next time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.